Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, I'm very excited because I have a selectman candidate here with me today, Erin Drew. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
And this is the first time Erin is on my show, and I think the first time she's running for office. We have two incumbents running for re-election to the Board of Selectmen, and Erin is a new candidate running for the board. So there'll be two seats up this year, and election day is April 5th. So Erin is running for one of those two seats on the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. So great to have you, to meet you. First of all, I met you
Thank
the
you.
first time today, right, Erin?
Yep, first time.
And it's great to meet you, and we're having a great conversation. And before the show started, and hopefully the show will be great as well. Hopefully.
Hopefully we didn't say everything we needed to say beforehand.
Yeah. Well, one thing, since a lot of people may not be that familiar with you, since you're a candidate, first time running for selectman, could you give us your background, experience, education, whatever you'd like, to introduce yourself to the people of Chelmsford?
Sure. So I'm originally from Central Mass. I grew up in a triple-decker in Worcester and then in Rutland, Massachusetts, just north of Worcester, where my parents still live. My husband is an operating engineer out of Local 4 in Boston. He grew up in Waltham, which is where we moved from when we came to Chelmsford. Let's see, I went to Worcester State. I have a bachelor's in business. I studied internationally at Shanghai International Studies University. I studied Chinese language there, and I have done some master's classes. I have a few of those under my belt. I have a professional background in trade compliance and logistics, which is regulation heavy. And I've been on the Zoning Board of Appeals in Chelmsford for just over 3 years now. I think that about
You're
sums
still
up
on
my
that board?
professional
Okay.
experience. I'm still on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
If you win selectman, could you stay on that board?
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, I
No,
see,
I
yeah.
don't believe so.
So you'll give that one up,
Yep.
the Board of
Yep, to
Appeals?
some
Yeah?
lucky person in town to take that over. And I have 3 kids in Chelmsford. So I have a 6-year-old, 3 girls, a 6-year-old that's in kindergarten, and 4-year-old twins. And that's about it. So yeah,
Well,
that about covers it.
yeah, it's fantastic. Well, there's a few other things I saw in your background experience that I wanted to mention. You coach soccer, apparently.
I coached
Was
soccer
that here
this
in
past
Chelmsford?
fall. Yeah, I coached soccer this past fall. I actually coached I coached both teams. All of my kids played, and I offered to coach the preschool team because they were in dire need. And then they said, "Oh, you want to do kindergarten too?" And I said, "Okay, sure. I'm going to be there anyway." So I feel like I spent a lot of time on the soccer field on Saturdays this past fall, but it was fun. Yeah.
Just about every
Yeah.
Saturday.
And that's
I
the first
bet,
time
huh?
I've ever done it. Yeah. Oh yeah, every Saturday. It was the first time I've coached, so that was
You
it
were
was
the
fun.
head coach?
Oh no.
Oh,
Well,
oh.
no. One of the teams, I guess. Yeah, I was considered the head coach. The other
Wow.
team, I was the assistant. I guess there is no head coach, but yeah.
Well, good thing they didn't have me, because when I was young, we never played soccer. It's not like today, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't know the first thing
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it was great to get the kids outside and active,
Oh, yeah, it's
especially during COVID and everything.
and
So to have
which is
stuff that they could do
fantastic.
outside was
And hopefully
amazing.
they didn't have to wear masks when they were running around, did they?
No,
Oh,
no,
good,
yeah.
good.
So it was nice to have them outside, and
Nice.
active. So
How
it was
old are
good.
your children, could you say?
So my oldest is 6.
Oh.
She's in kindergarten, and then I have twins that are 4, all girls.
6 and then 2 4-year-olds.
Twins.
Wow, that must keep your hands
Yes.
full in a
Yeah.
way. But
Hands
so
are full.
probably fun, right? To see
Yes.
the things they learn
Fun.
to say and do.
Crazy. It's fun and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know. So you're living on Shed Lane, right, with
Yep.
your husband and 3 children.
Yep.
And so you probably work a little part-time now, right? On real estate if you want to?
Well,
Do
so
I
I was
understand that?
working. I was actually, when I had my oldest, I stayed home for a few years, and then I actually went back to work part time right before COVID started, on a consultancy basis. And about a year ago, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So, I kind of left my career really. And I got my realtor's license this past fall, which is something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and slowly lean into that a little bit. And I'm running for select board. I'm leaning into my government roles here. So I'm changing things up a little bit. Yeah.
And the
So-
company you're working with is Berkshire Hathaway for
Yes.
real estate, right? That's unusual. Most people, they might go to Caldwell Bank or ERA or something.
Yeah,
I don't
Berkshire
hear-
Hathaway is a little less prominent in this area. They don't have an office directly in this area, so
So
Yeah.
why did you choose them? Do you?
I think they have as a company they have a great reputation. I actually think it's interesting that they don't have a large presence here. So, they have good training. Most importantly, I liked the sales manager.
Oh,
He sold me on it, kind of.
could
So
I ask
yeah.
where or she is
Waltham. They're
located?
based out of
Oh, I
Waltham,
see.
yeah. And also my in-laws are in Waltham, so I can always leave my children with my mother-in-law. So
Oh,
if I
that's
need to go to the
fantastic.
office.
Yeah.
So logistically speaking, it works out as well. So
So when you have time, hopefully, if people are interested in real estate, they could
yes.
contact you,
Yes.
call
Yeah.
you, or email you or something. Once, if you become a select person, your name will be on the town website.
Yeah.
Of course, they
There'll be
could
lots
also.
of reasons to call me and contact me. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, which would be
Yeah.
great. And Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett's company, right?
Yeah.
So I know that. So that'd be great to work for Warren, in
Yeah.
a sense, for Warren Buffett. He's such a brilliant man and a good man too, I'd say. Very nice person. But another thing I read about you, which is so interesting, you spent 5 years in China, right?
I did. I spent about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. I spent a year there teaching English right out of college, and then I came back to the U.S. and I was working in social services for a while, and I went back to China and I studied Chinese, and I worked over there for a few more years before coming back here and kind of going into a corporate role, and so spent a lot of my 20s over there.
So learning Chinese, to me, that's fascinating because it looks like such a difficult language.
It's difficult.
Like I took 3 years of Spanish at school. I still
Yeah.
can't speak it or whatever, but imagine with Chinese with those characters and everything,
Yeah.
it must be so difficult.
Yes. Well,
How
it's like
did you
learning
do
two
it?
languages, really. I feel like learning to speak it is one thing, and then
And
learning
then-
to write it is like learning a third language. So yeah,
It's amazing. So 5 years.
interesting.
So could I ask, you lived in Shanghai apparently, right?
I lived in a little town outside of Shanghai the first year that I lived there, and then when I went back later, I lived in Shanghai for about 3 years.
And could I ask, how did you like that? How were the people?
It's
How was it?
amazing. It's funny. I grew up in Worcester and then in Rutland. And Rutland, Worcester is, everybody knows Worcester. Worcester's a
Yeah.
small city, I guess.
Yeah.
Rutland is, as far as my husband's concerned, it's Wyoming. It's the middle of nowhere. I grew up on a dirt road in small town, central Massachusetts. So
Called Rutland?
yes,
Wow.
called Rutland. And then, I spent my adult years in Shanghai. So my mother was always like, you go from Rutland to Shanghai, but I kind of like the extremes. So, I've lived in a variety of sizes of towns, big cities, small towns, medium cities. My husband is born and raised in Waltham, so his perspective is a little different than mine. It's been an interesting life. I've lived in a bunch of different places, so.
And now you live in Chelmsford on Shed
Yes.
Lane. And why did you choose Chelmsford and how do you like Chelmsford?
We chose Chelmsford. My husband works in Boston mostly. He's based out of Belmont, so his commute was a huge factor. We lived in, a tiny little house in Waltham, which is most houses in Waltham, unless you're spending $5 million on a house. And when we found out we were having twins, we were like, okay, we have to go. So we need more room. Too many toys. So that's how we ended up in Chelmsford. Actually, our target area was Billerica. And we happened to find the right house in Chelmsford. So we ended up here kind of on accident, really. But it's a happy accident. We really like it here. We've really enjoyed our time here. Obviously, I've gotten involved. I've been on the zoning board. My kids are doing all the things. They're in the schools now. So
Which are
it's
a good school system, right?
yes. And the school system was a draw also. When we found the house, I said, I like Chelmsford is nice. Like, we could go to Chelmsford. Yeah.
I think you'll be very happy. And more so than if you lived in Billerica, even though Billerica is nice, I think most people would choosing between the two would choose Chelmsford.
Yeah.
But I'm prejudiced because
Well, my family is kind of out that 495 South way, so it is a little bit closer to them too. So it works out. Yeah, it's good. It's been a good
nice,
move.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the moves that you want to make is to be on the Chelmsford Select Board.
Yeah.
So could I ask why you decided to run for the Chelmsford Select Board and what your plans and goals are if you are elected on April 5th?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I've lived in a variety of types of towns and cities. I grew up mostly in a small town, and I think Chelmsford is at kind of a pivotal point in its development as a town. I think that, frankly, development is kind of banging down our door. We're at a geographic location that's competitive, and I think its development is coming, and I think that we need clear strong leadership to kind of manage that development and to do it in a concise manner and to keep our eye on the goalposts, you know. So I think I have the background experience, and I know what's going on in town. I think I have a good grasp on kind of how people feel about some of these things. And I think that I can help the town kind of navigate that and kind of move forward in a way that's beneficial for not only for my family, but for, you know, for everyone who lives in town. So
And your husband is very supportive of the idea?
he's
Because
supportive.
you'll be at...
It's nothing that he would ever do. My husband is like, you go ahead and run, you know, so you go ahead. But yes, he's supportive, yes. I think he's in the better you than me mode, so yeah.
It's a difficult thing
Yeah.
because of the meetings. You're all set for the late meetings on Mondays and then the
Yes.
town meetings.
Well, and he's also a homebody, so he's
Oh.
happy to be home with the kids at night while I'm doing meetings. And
Which is
yes,
wonderful.
yes,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
And
I'm the social butterfly,
Which
you
is
know,
great.
yes. I will go out and talk to everyone, so.
while you were going to school, did you also run for any offices or, have any leadership positions in school, like, president of a class or anything like
I
that?
did not, no. I worked a lot.
Oh, wow.
I worked a lot. I mean, in college, even in high school, yeah, I worked a lot. Is what I did in school mostly. Worked and studied, and that was it. So.
And then, well, you did very well, like, just to
No.
get the
I did
job.
okay. It was a hustle.
To get the job in China, I mean, they must have been so selective. Who were they going to hire and pay their living expenses for 5 years in another country like China?
No, so when I was living in China, I had mostly jobs with small companies, startup companies. I didn't actually kind of land the big corporate jobs that I was really looking for until I moved back to the U.S.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it took me a long. My career was a little bit of a zigzag. It wasn't a straight narrow path, you know.
Oh,
so.
because you were teaching English, as I recall now, right? In
Yeah, and
China,
then I worked in
at
social
first.
services, and I kind of went back to China, and then I fell back kind of into the business fields, and I did some sourcing work over there, which translated into trade compliance and logistics when I moved back to the States, and then I kind of took off from there. I got my customs broker's license. Yeah.
So you know all about international trade.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah, which is helpful because it's very regulatory heavy. So I'm used to reading through legalese and, you know, navigating government websites and offices and things like that. So
that'll be great experience for the select board because there's a lot of legalese involved with that, a lot of bylaws and how will you if constituents want to contact you once you're elected with phone calls, emails?
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I think they should. I think I'm hoping actually that my involvement in our town government will encourage other people that are frankly younger to get involved. Like the lack of involvement in town government in Chelmsford is concerning. And, you know, I would like to encourage people to get more involved. I'd like to encourage people to run. You know, I mean, in my precinct right now, Precinct 10 has 13 people running for 15 seats.
Yes.
And...
Oh, you're running for town meeting rep too, aren't you?
For
write-in or no?
People can write me in. It came to my attention afterwards. Somebody said, you know, you're going to be at the meetings anyway, so you should have them write you in for town rep. And I said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then I can vote. And so absolutely, if anybody would like to write me in for town rep for Precinct 10, I would be happy to represent you there also. But yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful to be involved. I'm really enjoying it. And I don't think that people realize how enjoyable it can be, you know. So I'm hoping that I can kind of encourage the younger voter base to get out there and to get more involved in the town. And
well, I'm so glad you got involved too, and you got to meet me.
Yeah, pleasure.
Oh no,
pleasure is all mine.
I got to meet you, which is my pleasure. But to help your campaign or to let people know, you have a campaign site on Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want to let them know what the name of that is? And do you want to invite them to like that page?
Yep, it's Erin Drew for Select Board. And you can find it through a basic Facebook search. It's a public page. And yeah, if you want to like it, if you want to send me messages, you can send me a message directly through there. If you want to ask me more questions about how I feel about various issues in town, I'm always happy to answer those. Community engagement is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
I plan to make myself as available as possible. So
wonderful. And as you may know, there was a big 400 unit approximately development for North Chelmsford.
Yeah.
And recently we had a special town meeting and the two warrant articles were approved. One was for the senior citizen units, about 40 or 50 of them or whatever. They had to approve some town funding for that. And so my basic question is, what do you think about this 400 unit proposed development? And it looks like it's going to be approved for North Chelmsford, where the UMass Lowell West Campus used to be.
So I attended that town meeting. It was interesting, and it was overwhelmingly voted for. And I'm not sure that I expected it to be such a favorably voted for vote. I kind of did expect it to go through, but development. I know development is a big issue in town. It's something that I myself am concerned with. I didn't move here from Waltham for this to become Waltham in 20 years. We moved here to be in a smaller town, so I sympathize with that mindset a lot. That development in particular, it's large. It's a lot of apartments. I think the senior housing is wonderful.
Yeah.
I heard the housing authority director mention during that meeting that he would like to see two 54-unit buildings, which I would also like to see. I'm curious if anybody has kind of pushed a little bit more for that.
Yeah.
I know there's some 40B things to take into account there, which I think is good. It will be nice to reach that 10% threshold at the 40B level. That particular project, I think the location is good. That particular project is one that, I think that the town voted overwhelmingly in favor of, and I'm probably in agreement with that.
Oh,
but
wonderful.
in general, I'm wary of the big development, and I understand how people are, so.
I think most people in Chelmsford are wary of big
Yeah,
developments.
I think it's a big issue for town.
Especially if you're trying right in the center of towns, and sometimes they propose that, some condos right in the center.
Well,
and all
anywhere.
that,
I mean,
but
even on the outskirts of town, people live
right.
there, so.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's an issue for everyone,
It is,
regardless of where it is. The center of town is its own animal,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Speaking of the center, how do you think it looks? Do you have any ideas for improvements in the center? Any concerns about parking or to beautification of the center of the town?
So I love the center. I think it's adorable. When we were house hunting, I remember driving through the center and being like, oh, this is really cute. Look at, it's beautiful. And in the spring, the flowers come out. The landscaping is done mostly really beautifully. I love, my kids love going to that square and running on the statue with the other kids in the summer after school. And, I think it's important for, with beauty comes pride. I think it's important. It brings a lot of pride to the people who live in a town to have particular town center look nice. And I think Chelmsford Town Center looks pretty good. I think there are some room for improvement. There is some parking down there. I think the signage could use a little bit of an update. Sometimes I think the parking is a little bit hard to find.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of areas that could use more landscaping. I know that area right in front of the library over here is a topic of conversation. But from what I hear, it's privately owned.
Yeah, where
they're not interested in
the mobile
selling.
gas station used to be there, maybe before you
Yes.
moved in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been quite a while that's been undeveloped, that area. It's a small kind of plot,
It's
but
small.
it's up to, like you said, it's privately owned. So
But I think that would be like a beautiful little sitting area. You could put some
would.
bushes there and some benches, and people could sit and watch the traffic go by. I would be curious to hear if anyone has kind of reached out to the owner. Maybe the town could do something in collaboration with them, just to put some plants there and kind of.
But I think the owner, given it's privately owned, they might want to make some money from that if they can.
Maybe.
But alternatively, maybe the town could negotiate to purchase the property and make it a nice. That would be great for, like you said, a little park and some benches. Maybe people could watch the cars go by and the people walk by. I
think that something could be done with that space. I don't know what they're working on, but I assume somebody is talking to them about doing something.
Yeah, I know. I've been very interested in that for couple of years now and contacting our community development director, but so thus far they haven't made a final decision, but I think after this conversation I'll contact them again and see. It would be great if the town would buy. Of course the town hates to spend because the owner might want $1 million or God knows what for that little piece of property. I kind of would be in favor of spending it if we can, because if we could preserve our open spaces and not have like a big commercial with a convenience store in there or something like that, it would look so much better for our town. It would be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics of
Yeah.
the what the owner is thinking and what the town can do about it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there's something that could be done. It's on my radar. I mean, there's
Good.
other things downtown. I know the brick walk is something that people have been talking about for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
There's other projects also, but I mean, I'm a huge fan of open spaces. So anytime you want to build a walk that goes, the rail trail is beautiful.
Yes.
Anytime people want to build walks, walking areas with outdoor space, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think it just adds to the town. So
I agree.
yeah.
And we have some walking trails throughout the town. And we're so lucky about that.
Yep.
In
Yeah,
fact,
they're
there's
wonderful.
one right near me on Wright Conservation Land off Parker Road. And people could walk there if they want. And there's a little parking area.
Yeah.
But since we spoke about the beautification of Chelmsford Center, we should be equal to also talk about the beautification of North Chelmsford at Vinyl Square. Do you have any ideas about that, North Chelmsford? Or?
I know that there's a whole plan, the whole plan for the Vinyl Square. There's a whole committee and a whole plan. I think Vinyl Square looks pretty good. I love the gazebo there. I love how they light it up in the winter. It's beautiful. I think they also have Freeman Pond going up there, which I love Freeman Pond. I love bringing my kids to the playground up there, the big wooden playground. I think it's wonderful.
Nice.
I know that there's some plans to kind of fix up those areas as well. And yeah.
Nice. Well, one of the important issues for the select board is tax classification. And that's where we could decide whether we'll have equal rates between commercial and residential or unequal rates, which is what we have right now. The businesses pay a little bit more per value of their property than the residents do. But that's up to the select board. Like every December, you would vote on it, whether you want to keep the rates the same, increase the rates on residential or business, or reduce them. So what are your thoughts about tax classification and the taxes that the businesses pay here in town?
So this is another one of the big three, I think, issues. So the tax classification conversation, I think the original split a few years ago was ambitious. It was quite a large split. I know that the board has kind of walked it back a little bit over the last couple of years. Generally speaking, I understand the draw for a split from a residential savings perspective. But, I've dug into the numbers over the last couple of weeks, and the average taxpayer in Chelmsford saved $150 their first year of the split. $150 is $100. I will take $150 all day. But I'm not sure that is possibly a benefit if it offsets our marketability as a town. I think that the split classification does hurt small businesses to a greater extent. Their bottom line is greater than it is for the residential taxpayer. And from a competitiveness standpoint, it isn't a draw for people coming into town. And, I don't think that we necessarily need to be drawing people into town, but I think that when we are a competitive market for places to come, we can be more selective about who we bring into town, who we want to bring into town, and who we don't want to bring into town. I think that keeping ourselves competitive as a town is important, and I think that the tax rate is maybe damaging that to some extent. Having said that, I mean, you can't roll it back to a level rate overnight. So, the board has rolled it back a little bit over the last couple of years. I think going forward, how they vote on that in future years, or how I potentially vote on that in future years, will depend on a lot of things. It'll depend on, where the real estate market goes and how our budget overall is as a town. But a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, that'll be big. So maybe this coming December, you'll be voting on that.
Maybe.
I think usually in November, there's a committee, tax classification committee, that prepares a report and recommendations. And then a lot of people come in, the businesses come in and say, let's get it back to equal. And some residents come in and they say, no, increase the rates on business. So it's a very interesting issue. But speaking of interesting, and looks like we're going to have a bunch of debates this year again, because right now we're taping this after 2 years we've been living with COVID. We haven't had public debates and without masks, especially for 2 years now. So I'm really looking forward to debates that were already scheduled this year. We have a CBA debate scheduled for March 10th. The Republican Town Committee is scheduled for March 17th. So, Erin, what are your thoughts about these debates? Are you excited about them? Are you preparing day and night, working on the issues? And
I'm excited. I'm very nervous. I've never, honestly, I'm nervous. I've never done anything like this. Having to kind of put yourself out there and all your thoughts and market yourself essentially is nerve-wracking a little bit. But I'm doing a lot of prep work. I've been on the ZBA, so I've kind of been involved indirectly in a lot of the town projects, even the bigger ones. I'm following everything that's going on in town because I'm kind of involved indirectly. So I know about a lot of the issues, but I am digging in to the details of some of those issues, and it's a lot of information. But I'm a learner, and I like to ask questions, and I love to talk to people. And I love that quote, everyone you meet knows something you don't, right? That's something that I remind myself of all the time. And I really look forward to meeting with all the people that I've been meeting with so far in my campaign, and all the people that I'm going to meet with over the next few weeks. They have a lot to teach me, so, and I have a lot to learn, but I'm looking forward to that. So
that was a nice, humble way of saying that,
well, I don't know everything.
Not many politicians are humble, I don't think. But our selectmen candidates, I think, our select board candidates are so. But a lot of politicians, especially nationally, aren't humble at all. So it's great to see that.
Well, you have
So,
to be confident, right? But
yes.
no, it's it's
Which
in the balancing.
and you have that great experience, as I always say, and a great education. Especially living overseas and having an important position with companies, and now Berkshire Hathaway, and your family, have a nice family, a husband and 3 children living on Shed Lane in a nice house, I think, here in town. So I think
we're doing all right. We're doing I mean, everybody does the best they can,
Yeah,
so.
wonderful. Well, we only have a minute left, so how about, do you want to talk about asking people for their vote on April 5th, or how would you like to summarize this little get-together today?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So many people have reached out. Yeah. I have a lot of interviews to do, a lot of talking to do, a lot of research to do. And I will do my best to learn as much as I can over the next few weeks, and to kind of put my feelings out there and my thoughts. And I hope that people will reach out if they have specific questions. I hope that I can answer them. And I hope that you will consider giving me one of your 2 votes on Election Day. So.
Which April 5th, and the polls are usually open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And of course, we have 11 precincts now, right? Rather than the 9.
And if you're not registered to vote yet, I believe the deadline is March 16th, right?
Yes, I think so.
So in the spirit of getting people out there voting, by March 16th you have to register.
Which would be nice. And everybody, hopefully you'll check your new precinct. Hopefully you know by now. But if you don't, check with the town clerk's office and find out where your new precinct is and where you'll be voting this year. Now, this year I'll be voting in McCarthy School because of Precinct 8 I'm in now. So I'm looking forward to the vote. I look forward to seeing everybody on Election Day, especially now the